Hello, everyone, and welcome to Conversations with Catherine. I am very excited to have as my guest today joining me, Colleen Jennings-Roggensack. She is the ASU Vice President for Cultural Affairs and Executive Director of ASU Gammage. And Colleen, it is so nice to see you and join you in talking and having this conversation because you are a woman who is difficult to lock down. You're always so busy.
Oh, thank you, Catherine. I am so excited to be talking with you. It's such a great time to have the opportunity to talk about art and culture, to talk about Broadway, to talk about our community. So I'm very excited and looking forward to this.
Well, thank you very much for making the time. You know, I personally have missed Broadway at Gammage very much. Watching Hamilton the movie recently is such a wonderful reminder of the power of Broadway.
Yes.
How has the absence of Broadway during this pandemic affected you personally? What are you most missing right now?
I tell you what I am most missing. For me, the magic of Broadway, the magic of theater is sitting in the house, it's what we call the inside of the theater, and waiting for the curtain to go up and for everyone to go on this journey together, a journey they don't know about, a journey that will hold surprises and wonder and tears and joy. And that moment is that moment that I'm desperately missing. I am addicted to, and I'm desperately missing it.
And you're so passionate about it. So I can imagine that it's kind of a feeling of loss for you as it is for a lot of people who so love Broadway and the arts. With New York and Broadway staying dark through the end of the year, what does that mean for tours on the road like ASU Gammage? Because I understand that routing shows across the country is very complex.
That's such a great question. Because we are an ecosystem, and it's one of the reasons I sit on the board of directors of the Broadway League. The road, as we call it, is as important to a Broadway producer as Broadway is, because the life of a show is extended once it comes on. The financial life of a show gets extended, so investors get reimbursed, but actors get an opportunity to work. That's something else I miss, actors working. And actors get an opportunity to spread their chops, work on their chops, get them out on the road, and then go back to Broadway and do their work. And just as actors are in Broadway saying, oh, I think it's time for me to get back out there and see what the rest of the world is like, they get a chance to do that. So we miss that. We are connected on the road through a series of theaters, and about 150 traversing the country, and any show that goes out is routed. And there's an East Coast route, a West Coast route, Southern route, an East to West route. So what's happening now with COVID-19 and with our virus is that states are closed down. You know, we ourselves are the hot spot for the world. Whoever knew that would happen? In fact, our neighbors in New Mexico recently, who we love dearly, took out a full-page colored ad in the Arizona Republic asking us not to come. They were very polite. It was very lovely, but it also means a tour can't go from Arizona to New Mexico if we're closed, or up to Utah, Idaho if we're closed, and California, you know, which is pivotal to the road.
Yes.
So then we're now looking at how do we put those tours together with the states that are open. New York believes, and I sit on 19 different task force committees in Broadway, and we believe that the road would open before New York would open. But now with the way things are spreading, fluid is the big word we use of the day, and it looks like things are very fluid. But our hope is still that we will look at sections of the country and look at the megas, the big shows, Lion King, Frozen, Wicked, Hamilton, and see if we can get the megas out first. I happen to be the Hamilton captain. I'm so blessed.
Yay!
And yay, I'm the Hamilton captain. And so for me, it's the West, and it's the Hamilton tour of the West. And I have been staying in close contact with all of my colleagues who run those theaters. In fact, we've named ourselves WTC, What the COVID. And so we have these meetings on a regular basis about when is reopening happening? Do you have testing? Will you be able to test the company? The kinds of testing and cleaning protocols that not only our theater will require, but all the unions, the stagehand unions, the musician unions, the actors' equity unions, everyone's going to have protocol. And then how are we responding to it? So it is so very critical that we continue to stay in contact and figure out how things are going to open. Currently, our Broadway season is slated to start with that kickoff of Hamilton. Obviously,
Yes.
and the word being fluid, I want everyone to say it with me, fluid, is that if indeed we are at this high level, again, of COVID-19, we can't ask a company to come in and put the actors in danger. We can't ask our audiences to come back and put them in harm's way. So all of it is, we are closely watching. The other thing, much like the major league sports, NC2A, we are looking at how long does it take for someone to prep. We know for our NC2A athletes, they need 90 days before they go onto the football field. And so if NC2A isn't going to open, our actors need 6 weeks. We need 6 weeks to remount, get even if they've been doing it all of their lives, they've been singing those Hamilton songs, very young lives, they need to have that amount of time. So as we get inch closer and closer to that 6-week date, we will make decisions. We have been leapfrogging shows on our season. Many of what now your Zoomers, I guess that's what we're going to call them, your Zoomers would be aware of, that we've taken some summer shows and we put them in the fall. We've taken some fall shows and now we've left them to the spring. We're going to take some spring shows and take them to the summer. So the other thing we're looking at is a non-traditional season. It would traditionally be August to about June. Well, now maybe we're looking at October to about July, or we're looking at January to September. So knowing that those kinds of things are happening, we are definitely going to have a season. We are definitely not, and I'm knocking on wood, you can't see this, I'm knocking on wood, but we are definitely going to have a season, but we have to be flexible in terms of public health and public safety.
Right. So today, as of July 10th, as we are having this conversation, the plan is for the season to begin with Hamilton in October. The tickets have already gone on sale for the new Broadway season for 2021, with shows like Hamilton, Mean Girls, and Frozen in the lineup. You've got some big shows.
We've got some
what
big
has
shows.
been, what has been the response to coming back potentially in October? That's the plan. And what kinds of protocols and safety measures do you have to put in place to make sure that everybody's going to be comfortable coming back in October?
Coming back. Absolutely. Two really great questions. First of all, the response goes from, just like you and I just said, we really miss Broadway, we really want to be in the theater, to I may be older, I may have a compromised immune system, I dearly want to come back and see Broadway, but I have to take care of myself. So that's the range and the arc. But by and large, overwhelmingly, people want to be back in the theater, but people also want to be safe in the theater. We have been busy working on protocols, and protocols not only as they just pertain to ASU Gammage, but to the unions, as I spoke about, to Broadway, but also Arizona State University has protocols. And it goes from cleaning protocols. So currently, this is what we say. Our protocols are legally and reasonably safe under the current circumstances. So what that means is our current circumstances are COVID-19, no vaccine today. But as we learn more and more and more as we go along, we'll be able to alter those. We will be looking at masks being worn, as all of the cultural and science organizations in the state have. We actually put together a press release. We have a council of about 68 of us and said everyone will require that, so masks will be worn. Currently we're discussing temperature checks, but as it goes on, temperature checks become less of an impact. And when you're outside and waiting to come inside and it's 114 degrees, you're always going to read hotter. So we are toying with that. We are looking for our companies. Then there are several different protocols. So there's an audience protocol, there's a crew protocol, there is an cast protocol on the stage. All of our workers in the front of the house, concessions, box office, we're looking at touchless tickets. We're talking about digital tickets. We're talking about digital programs. So there will be less of an exchange. After we have spent so much time building those beautiful bathrooms in Gammage, we're looking at limiting how many people will be in the bathroom at the time. We're going back to the old days. So we will be doing that. We will also have people whose responsibility is just to clean. several times during the performance, and obviously before and after each performance. Every actor, before they come into the theater, will have a test and a temperature check coming in, as will the crew, as will their dressers, the wig makers. We're looking at cleaning with UV light, which actually can sanitize. It's like being in a tanning bed, I'm told. I've never been in one, never had. Never had to.
I have. I hate to admit it, but that was in my
Okay.
college days.
Well, okay, good. Thank you. And it was just yesterday.
Yes,
but we're
just
looking
yesterday.
at how quickly that cleans, because we will also be cleaning down dressing rooms while the show is going on, before and after. The orchestra pit. We're doing such work. I'm on the task force for the orchestra pit. We're talking about protecting the audience from the musicians from the audience, and the musicians from the actors on the stage. So we're looking at pit coverings, or we're even exploring almost like cocoons. They will get into not a plexiglass, but a very thick shower curtain, let me call it that, zip themselves in. All the music is all they're cabled in. And then, so now our big question is conductor. Do we have the conductor? And we met with conductors this week, so I know we're not going to do this, but we have conductors in like The Boy in the Bubble, or do we have them remotely? And in many Broadway shows that we've had where there's the pit isn't used, it's in the back of the house, the conductor's often remotely, and he's looking on a television screen. We're talking about separating out the orchestra in different parts of the theater. And of course, it goes back through a cable, so you'll still hear that sound. So those are the kinds of things we're looking at. We are also looking at—
So much to think about.
Oh, there's so much. Looking at serving concessions outside. That inside, so once you get in, your mask is on, doing merchandise outside, having timed arrivals like you do at Disneyland. So you'll get your ticket and it'll say, Catherine, you
go
need
in
to
at
be
this
here
time
at 6:25. That's your entrance point. We're looking at an earlier entrance point so that some of our patrons can get in and get there early. We could never consider, and people have had, people are so generous. People call me all the time with suggestions and email me suggestions. And one of them was, have no intermission, have everybody come in, do that, and leave. And I said, it's kind of good, except when you have a 3.5-hour wicket.
Yeah.
And the company actually needs a break. They need that little break in there. We can't do that. We've talked about self-contained shows with musicians. I said, except we hire a lot of musicians. We hire local musicians to fill out the pit all the time. And I said, well, I'm going to speak on their behalf. I wouldn't be happy with that. I actually employ a lot of musicians in our hometown, so we need to do that. So there are a lot of things we're talking about, but it is all fluid because of, if you had asked us 2 months ago, the testing took 7 to 8 days. Now we're at 1 to 2 days, and there are clear at the airport, they're talking about a rapid test, 15 minutes. ASU happens to be working with the Mayo Clinic and working our test, which has gone from sticking that stick up your nose to a saliva test now, which makes it totally different and much quicker. So as we go along, we find out more about the virus and more about how to combat that. These things will change, but we will post signs. You'll get emails from me with a little video saying, this is what to expect when you come to the theater. These are our protocols. These are our cleaning protocols. We're asking to have protocols of our vendors who come in and drop off things. So there are so many
moving parts.
So many moving parts. But a lot of good minds thinking about them, both medically, legally, and creatively.
Well, so it astounds me that you're able to think through all of these moving parts and so many more layers than I could have ever imagined. And yet at the same time, ASU Gammage has been able to pivot during this pandemic by creating this online content with the launch of Digital Connections, which has been very successful, hasn't it?
It has been so successful. We had one of our big hits with 11,000 people, Jason Derulo. Oh, he's so dreamy. And we did a live concert with Jason. We did live Q&A. Our students handled the Q&A, and it was amazing. And people were so thrilled. They go, when's the next one? And the next one was Iconopop, and the same thing happened. So not only have we been doing that, we've been keeping people in touch with Broadway through our digital content program. So Christina Alabato, who is one of our rising stars, is on Broadway when it comes back. in Mean Girls. We did an interview with her. We did a great interview with Gustav Farwell, who, for those of you who are Sun Devil football fans and you hear, "Go Devils," that's Gustav's voice. And he's been in Barcelona in Spain. He's an opera singer and has become internationally famous for singing thank you arias as the first responders in Barcelona went to the hospital. So we're so excited. He's actually an ASU alum, but we're going to have him back. We're going to have him come and visit us.
Oh,
we
that's
have been
great.
doing some live performances. We did one with the Art Center in Abu Dhabi of a piece we commissioned with Camille Brown. And it was called Ink. And Camille is not only an amazing choreographer with her own company, but has been nominated for several Tonys. She's currently directing for Color Girls Who Considered Suicide When the Rainbow Isn't Enough on Broadway. She's also directing another piece in Connecticut, and she is still creating work and choreographing for Disney and a number of other folks. So we've had those live things happening. Lemon Anderson, who is a playwright who wrote Spike Lee's whole first season of She's Gotta Have It, is our artist in residence, interviewed Daniel J. Watts, who's another Broadway performer, and they did poetry slam and then interviewed each other. So we've been doing these great things. We've been teaching, we have fun demos. We've had our local artists, who we call our TAP artists, our teaching artist programs, do programs for our K through 12s, as well as our college students. So there's a liveliness to digital for us. And it's such a liveliness. We're going to have our first national Camp Broadway. We launched next week. I should have been wearing my t-shirt. We launched next week. But there are programs that we will keep going because actually a lot of people get access to art and culture who may not be able to come to the theater. And whether it is physically, they may not be able to come to the theater, or financially, they may not be able to come, they'll be able to participate. So we're very excited about that as well.
Yeah, technology has really been a saving grace during this period, that's for sure. I do want to talk about, because you touched on the fact that you were on the board of directors for the Broadway League.
Yes.
Speaking about, using technology, it's Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Committee has developed a new speaker series called Listen, Learn, Act: Conversations about Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion, which recently featured you talking with Tony Award-winning director Kenny Leon. And I loved that conversation. I had a chance to listen to it, and that's not something I would normally have an opportunity to listen to. So I thank you for that. Why do you think that was so important for the committee to develop something like that?
What's so important is as we move forward, part of the intellectually people say yes, yes, but it's the why we move forward. So to hear from Kenny, his journey, his work as not only a Tony Award-winning director, but a film director and television director, of why EDI is important, equity, diversity, and inclusion, and why it isn't just important for Kenny or for myself, but it's important for the organization, for everyone who we work with, and how much more you gain and the insight you have. And in fact, we're having another Listen, Learn, Act with the Broadway Advocacy Coalition, who put out the letter, Dear White Theater Community, and now has put out a second letter about demands. And so we're looking to them to provide us with information, for us to learn things we don't know and to act. We are in partnership as well with the Black Theater United, which includes the royalty of Broadway, Brian Stokes Mitchell, Audra McDonald, LaShawn, Cynthia Ervil, and they have been doing a broader vision of EDI, which includes vote, make sure you vote equally, very important, census, make sure you file for census, law, know the law, and the history. So an interview they just had, and I would recommend people listen to, with Cheryl Eiffels, who is the cousin of Glenn Eiffels, the famous journalist who's passed away, was about the NAACP Legal Defense Fund and why that's important and what your rights are. But to understand the history, which is so critical, gives you the why and says, oh, okay, I get it, I understand it. And then other people's stories come out. The cast from The King and I have been doing some social platforms on the number of Asian artists who are not cast regularly, the number of Asian artists. There was one story where Jose Sullivan said, I went into to cast for a role, and there was this side of the room were all Asian, that side of the room was all white, and one of the white actors said, "Oh, are you in for that role?" One role. Where the other side of the room was in for all of it. So it is this awakening, amazing moment, and we're all in it together, and it's going to make us all better. So that's why that is important. But other things I want to talk about that the EDI committee is doing for the Broadway League is we are looking at job fairs. So people know, I don't know if you always said, I'm going to grow up and I'm going to be this journalist. It's going to be great. You know, I grew up saying I was going to be an astronaut. And then my eyesight did not make that happen. So then I thought, well, and then I became a modern dancer. And I thought, well, at the end of my career, what am I going to do? And luckily, I met a mentor, Shelton Sandfeld, who said, you could do this. This is, you could easily do this. This would be great for you. Well, most people who come into the Broadway world, the administrative side of the Broadway world, don't have that mentor, don't know someone who says, here, let me open a door for you. So we're doing job fairs, we're doing mentorship.
Is what Kenny touched on in your conversation about the importance of having that conversation, that opportunity.
Exactly. And that makes all the difference in the world that you have that opportunity. And we have programs that for high school students, so speaker programs so they know and understand, college students like our Broadway League at Penn internship program, which we have with companies who come in. You're a young person of color and you want to learn about company management is there. I mean, there's even things like conducting, and young people beat their way to my door, and a young man beat his way to my door and said, I want to know how to conduct on Broadway. Can you get me in the pit? And I went, let me ask. And I actually got him in the pit. It sort of started his career on doing that. But a lot of people don't know they can do that. So that's what EDI is doing. And that's what our colleagues, not only in Broadway, but across the country are doing.
Well, it's so necessary. And Kenny touched on that, but he also said something which I found very also fascinating to think about. And that is that he said about Broadway looking different when it returns, because people have now been in this time where people in the industry where they've been able to really strengthen themselves in different ways, in ways they probably never imagined. And so in that way, he believes from the inside out how people have really evolved, that Broadway is not going to look the same when the lights go on again. Do you feel like it's going to be a different Broadway?
I think it will be a different Broadway. I absolutely do. And as I spoke to you about one producer who called me, another producer called me and said, I want to know, and I try to keep people nameless in this, but we're casting the show with this historic figure. Do you think that figure could be Black? And we had a really in-depth conversation about it, because clearly what Lin-Manuel Miranda did with Hamilton was extraordinary. And I always will think of George Washington as a handsome Black man. Yay. So you begin to talk about that, but then you also talk about who the character is and what does that mean, especially if you're dealing with a living character. And how does an audience relate to that? How does the greater kind of Broadway community relate to that? And I don't think it's an easy answer. I'd love to say, yes, everyone, should be cast as everything. But if we're doing a musical about Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., I can't see a white person playing that role.
Right.
So I think that there are going to be those give and takes, but I think Kenny's absolutely right. I think everyone will look through a different eye, just as like Spotco and the big marketing companies in New York have said, oh my goodness, we only knew how to pitch a show through the set of these eyes, which happen to have all been white. Now their COO is an African-American woman. They've diversified what the team is. So as we're talking about demographics in this country, you're now talking about people who are going to market and understand everyone doesn't look at something the same way. And so I think, yes, it will be, and it will be better, and it will be wonderful. So I had a patron ask me, well, Colleen, what about the classics? I don't want to know about the new shows. And I said, the classics will still be there. There'll be different people in them, but you'll still see the classics. And I just think people will say, oh yeah, I get it. It's theater. I'm releasing myself to the magic of theater. I remember the first time, Catherine, we had Mamma Mia. The first time we had Mamma Mia many times, but the first time we had Mamma Mia and the fiance
I saw it first
Black.
at Gammage.
Yay, which is
years
wonderful.
ago.
Years ago. And we had the fiance of the ingenue was Black. And I remember sitting in the audience and he came out and really collectively, I could hear the audience and go, and then they went, oh yeah, he's a fiance. But there's still that moment of, oh yeah, he's a fiance. Or when we had Lynn Corbett Taylor's son, the famous Broadway choreographer who is Native American, and her son played Frankie Valli in a couple of the matinees for us in Jersey Boy, and his voice was amazing and tremendous. You know, so I think that people will go with the flow. You know, there's an Asian Ariel out on out with Disney on Broadway. The Jelani Aladdin, who played Hans, was African American, and you kind of went, oh yeah, he's hunky and he's that guy, you know. So it is you were in the theater in that role, and hopefully what Kenny also meant was we will hear other people's stories, which are really important. We learn so much about each other through our stories, and more of those stories will appear on stage.
Well, we are so anxious to have Broadway back, as I know you are. So Colleen, thank you for making the time to share with me all that's happening and what we can look forward to. I really appreciate it. I know your time is very limited. I do want to remind people that they can find out more about the digital connections by going to asugammage.com/digital connections. And also for those season tickets for 2021, asugammage.com.
Absolutely, positively, Catherine. Thank you so much. And I look forward to seeing you inside Gammage.
Thank you. You will see me definitely. Good to see you, Colleen. All the best.
Right. Take care.
Thanks so much for watching Conversations with Catherine. Please remember to hit the subscribe button, like, and comment while you're here. I'll see you next time.